Hello everyone, it's Matt here and welcome to a blog entry I'm calling Building for the Black Country. So basically there's a Lego show I'm doing on the 30th of April, which is called the Black Country Brick Show, which is being held in the Phoenix Collegiate in West Bromwich. You'll have to excuse me eye movements, I'm reading my notes. So the show is open 10 till 4, but there is some pre-show set up on Friday, which means I'm effectively getting a lot of stuff early, packing it up on Friday, because I've got the Friday off work, thankfully. So it means I can pack stuff up Friday, ship some of it out Friday afternoon / evening, set it all up Friday, or a good chunk of it up Friday. Then Saturday, I can then set up a few more bits and pieces, and once that's all set up, I can then start working out other bits and pieces, and doing some testing and all that sort of stuff. But before I can actually do any displaying, I need to sort of work all the back bits and get it all ready to display. So one of the things is I'm building brand new roads and pavements. So this is one of the new modules. This is actually an inset track. So this is actually for a what you might call a tram track in the UK, but this is more for interurban or trolley lines, as you call it in the US. So basically you have a central track in the middle, as you can see here, and there's a roadway. Now the road, technically speaking, is wide enough for a parked car plus a car to pass it, although that does kind of infringe on if there was a tram in the way. So that would be, you could park a car here or a smaller vehicle, and you could possibly have a car go past it, but you wouldn't be able to have anything on the line at the time. So this is effectively designed to be a single track trolley line. It's not going to be powered in the iteration that will take to Black Country. It's just there for show purposes, more or less. So effectively, this is going to be what it will eventually be, a trolley line or an access route for freight interurban from one area of the layout to another. And this is actually going to be for access to, I don't know, a car ferry or car float service or something like that. So basically, you'll have a freight train, it will decouple the caboose or whatever, and take some of its cars up to the car ferry, swap cars possibly, and then bring the loaded ones, or does an exchange, and then takes the new ones out, or something along those lines, where there's a service or something that needs car swapping out further away from the main area. And then also you got the passengers trolley service as well. So this is one of the new modules. This does not actually meet the Mills train standards, and I'll explain that. It is technically Mills. It's 32 by 48, so 32 in the depth and 48 across here. But it isn't Mills height, because I have a Mills height module here, and I can show you that if I connect these up and drop the base plate in the meantime, you can sort of see, if I hold this up, there is a plate's worth of difference. The reason for that being, once I've got this separated, is that, I'll put this away now, is that if I'm modelling trolleys or interurban services, they're not going to be as maintained or as built up as a high-speed line, such as a main line for a big companies like the Pennsylvania, the New York Central, New Haven, one of the bigger railroads. So if you have a look at the track module, you can sort of see here you have a ground level here, then you have two layers of ballast, or two plate layers of ballast, because obviously it's Lego, and then you've got the Peter 9-volt track itself. Now the problem with this is that that's all very well if you're running mainline trains, you have a nice ballast shoulder, it helps keep the track in, but that's also a waste of parts. And as a trolley line, they weren't built to this spec. Now, trolley lines, not saying they weren't built to this spec, but the vast majority, this would be over-engineering. It's a waste of materials. Trolley lines, generally speaking, or interurban services, were not run that fast. Most of them, generally speaking, if you're on an interurban thing, were probably running at a maximum of about 30 miles an hour. Probably less than that, because a lot of the time they were slow moving, because they're on streets. So you wouldn't have needed the speed, but you might have needed the pulling capacity. And again, if you're doing a freight service, or primarily a freight service, speed probably isn't everything, because you want the ability to haul a lot of freight, and you're impacted on speed by things such as like grade crossings, if you've got any industries to switch on the route, if you've got anything you need to be aware of, if you've got any turn bridges, restricted clearances, restricted sight, because obviously if you had a sharp curve or something where you didn't have full clearance, unless you sent somebody out to check it was clear, you'd have to approach it at a very slow speed, maybe walking speed, or something maybe just above that, to make sure that the route was clear, so either you could brake if it wasn't, or it was something where if it was clear you could then accelerate possibly to match the speed. So you've got all this extra plate layer effectively that's only adding weight and complexity to actually building these track modules. So the thing I'm thinking of is stripping off a layer of plates. So I've already done that with this module right here. So this is actually on the new spec, or what I call it, the trolley spec. So I just need to do the same with this. The problem I've got is that doing that work to this straight track module is perfectly fine. Doing it to a lot of the other modules is perfectly fine. I'm just shrinking it a little bit. The problem I've got is that when I turns to things like this, it's not quite so simple, because I need that extra layer of plates to act as a tile below the track. So effectively what I'm going to have to do is lose one of the plate layers and then just shrink the track down slightly to make sure it fits, which is not that easy, to be honest. The other thing I might just do is just change certain bits and pieces, and then just have to worry about this sort of stuff later. So I'll put that to one side. So yeah, that's the other thing, is that I'm rebuilding the roads, but also means I've got to rebuild the track. So far, this is the only module I've built to this new standard, but the rest of it should be quite easy going. I converted this, once I'd accidentally smashed it up in a fit of rage, I built this back up in, I just said, less than 5 minutes. It was quite an easy job to do, to be honest. Most of the thing was making sure it was all spaced out correctly, because effectively all I did was change where the track is on this end here, from being a brick in height to being the two plates. These are two 1x8 plates underneath the end pieces. And obviously you've got to change the supports underneath the track to match that. The rest of it was just literally just making sure there wasn't the extra layer of plates, and away you go. You know, it's been built, it's still sturdy. I can still flex it slightly, but it's not as bad as you might expect. It's certainly sturdier than certain builds from Lego I've had over the years, but you know, it's nice and sturdy. I wouldn't recommend you stood on it, but it would probably cope, judging from the hydraulic test of Lego that was on YouTube that I watched at some point. But yeah, so that's it effectively. So this is one of the new modules, and also because I'm then rebuilding modules for the track height, because it's the new road, because it's embedded, because again the road, because I'm doing things with the track, doesn't meet the normal spec, all this sort of stuff. Because of that, the buildings I'm building will then have to be changed as well, because the building I've got a brick bank. I've got one module for the warehouse. The warehouse is probably going to be okay, although because I've adjusted the track height, I'll then need to take down a few bits. Other than that, it should be fine. And effectively, it's just one of the things where I'm going to have to gently adjust certain bits and pieces so that they fit the new height. So I'm just trying to think. Well, so I've got the I got the bit of the warehouse I need rebuilding. I've got a built copy of the brick bank. I've also got a ground floor of the police station. The police station needs a major revamp anyway. It needs a height adjustment. It needs the adjustment for the building for the extension off the side. And there's also a few of the buildings I've got partially built or partially underway. And again, those will then need a change to fit in with the new height of the road and pavement, to make sure they're all compatible. So obviously that's a lot of work to do, although it's not that great in terms of actually getting stuff done. The primary thing of the show is making sure I have all the track done and enough of the road to give somewhere for the trains to service, on the basis that this is a work in progress, this is how far I've gone. And watch out for the coming years when it gets more developed and finished and that sort of stuff. So obviously that's more for the layout. I've also got some new trains on the way, or new trains in progress. So one of these, I'll bring over. It's not complete. It's mostly complete. It's complete enough to show off. Is actually a Glen Holland combine. So this was a model modified from instructions he gave off for Christmas time 2020. So this is a modified version. I've extended the length, so this is actually almost a 40-foot length passenger coach or combine. I think it works out to be about 38 to 39 feet in actual fact from end to end. Couple of face to couple of face, it's probably about 40 or slightly over. But in actual fact, the actual vehicle itself is about a 39 foot coach, which is what you'd have for certain vehicles. It's probably more of a homebrewy sort of combine, although you could probably find a few railroads with something very similar. And Glenn modelled it after a combine that was in use on John Allen's layout, and it's actually used more or less as a caboose, although you could use it for, I think John Allen probably used it as a caboose on one of his mine trains, on the basis that then, well, at least there's some passenger capacity for workers, for management, etc., to then ride the train as well. So that's the combine. That should get complete by Black Country Bricks. Primarily it's going to be, there's a few parts to swap out. I need to paint some 1x2x2 window pieces in black, because they don't come in black and they're for the cargo area doors. I need to finish the end handrails and need to do the underframe. But the body is done, the interior is detailed. I might add a bit more detail and maybe a passenger or two. But in total, it's done. Most of the hard work's done anyway. There's a few bits and pieces to do. Eventually, that will be joined by just a standard passenger coach. Unfortunately, I've not got to that point yet. But for now, the coach is pretty much done. And I can obviously start doing bits and pieces. I might be able to build the roof for the passenger coach, because obviously the roofs should be identical. Maybe a few other bits and pieces. But on the whole, that should get complete. That's effectively a caboose I can take with me. Also, I need to finish a few other bits and pieces. So there's some wood. There's a couple of box cars that I've probably discussed on the channel before. I can't remember. Hopefully they'll be in a usable service. I'm hoping to decal up some of the reefs I've got, the BMR reefers. I've got, I think 3 of them are in a built and decalable state. Decalable, so if I can letter them up. So they're ready for lettering. I think they're pretty much done for the rest of it. We've all got the correct couplers on. They've all been converted to knuckles, etc., etc. So I just need to get those done effectively. And then obviously I've got some reefs I can take. I think I've got some box cars, some tank cars, some flat. I think I've got possibly 1 or 2 40-foot flat cars, which I've modified from the VMR 50-foot design. I can take those with me as well for some flat car service. I think as obviously the rest of it's just going to be coal hoppers for the power plant industry. Just got some of that to take, because especially it's a lot of it is just going to be getting stuff ready, getting stuff organised, and just rebuilding stuff. The more interesting thing is going to be for DCC for the trains. Obviously, the trains, I'm going to convert the trains to DCC, so I'll then need a DCC system to control the trains, unless they'll just go for a dummy sort of standard power pack and do it that way, which I might do. For instance, it's going to be very easy, because effectively it's just a 12 volt supply and then just change the polarity for the change the polarity to alter the direction. DCC decoders are normally in a DC compatible state, because obviously they rectify any power they come in, because normally they're on AC, and then they convert that to a split between the DCC command signal and then power for the functions, the lights and that sort of stuff. So obviously the system is clever enough to pick up that it's on a DC system and it's picking up however many volts, and once it's met the criteria for powering up the actual decoder itself, it can then power up the motor. And it will normally, when you're on a standard DC mode with decoders, it will power the motor and the headlight, and maybe the sounds when it's got enough power to fire up the decoder but not move. It might fire up the sounds as well, and then also when you move off when applying more voltage, it will then go, I've got more voltage, I can then power up the motor and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of steps to do. There's about I think it's about 5 weeks on Saturday to do everything. I'll get everything ready. The DCC conversion is not going to be that hard. It's just effectively soldering up the connector. It does mean I'm going to have to break open do some sacrilege, get some 9-volt motors broken into, and break the electrical connections inside. So it's not a pleasant job, but it needs to be done to convert them to DCC. Ruin the motors, some might say, but it's just something that needs to be done for them to be controllable with the lights and sound. So yeah, there's a lot to get done for Black Country. Hopefully it'll all get done. The track adjustment is probably the biggest one. That's obviously just a weight saving in parts and space and weight. So it's quite a good thing to do to get everything shrunk down by a plate. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you multiply that by everything you're building, it soon adds up. So yeah, so that's it for this quick little blog. There's obviously a lot of stuff being done in the background. There's always something else happening, or something else I'm thinking with or tinkering with. So hopefully I'll have something more concrete to show off. But that's it for now, and see you soon.